why a coach refutes it. I don't get why a reporter would just make it up when he's got to be in that locker room 6 days a week. What do you make about the Lamar Jackson stories? I mean, it's been a weird year. Practices, doesn't practice. What do you make of the story?
A couple things. Like, I think number one, Colin, there's obviously a lot of water under the bridge between the Ravens and Lamar. You want to go back to the contract negotiation, you can. He's obviously had his issues staying healthy the last couple of years, and you do have to wonder if that's something bigger. Like, if there's something there that, like, his body's breaking down because of the historic amount of damage he's taken on as a quarterback, that's starting to catch up with him. So you have that piece of it. The other piece of it that, like, is a little inside baseball, but he doesn't have an agent. And so when he does get hurt, a lot of times the full information on what his injury is, how severe it is, like, a lot of times that doesn't really fully come to light, which raises a lot of other questions, both publicly and maybe even in some corners of the locker room on, well, what's actually wrong with Lamar? And I think that's one reason why, like, John Harbaugh came out and was so transparent. He's usually not, but was so transparent about Lamar Jackson's injury and that it was worse than just a normal bruise earlier in the week. I think he was taking up for him. My experience has been that John Harbaugh has been one of the most ardent defenders of Lamar. So I don't know that anything's broken there, but things have certainly gotten wonky. And we are at a point now where we're going to be talking about these things contractually. His cap hits the next 2 years are $74.5 million. He's got 2 years left on his deal. They had talked about going back in and giving him a correction to his previous contract after Josh Allen got one last offseason. That's obviously going to be on the table again this offseason. And if all the injury stuff is the backdrop to that, well, then, we're talking about having to answer some pretty significant questions going forward. So, I think Lamar Jackson is a Baltimore Raven in 2026, but this definitely feels like, after the expectation they had internally for where the team was going to be going into the year, that there could be some pretty big changes coming in Baltimore. I could just tell you, I've talked to people there who felt like this was the best roster they'd had in decades. And to not make the playoffs, obviously, is going to get the owner's attention and could lead to some changes, whether, it's some level of wholesale change or more cosmetic changes, we'll see.
All right, it's somewhat amusing. It appears Albert Breer is pushing back a bit, tempering the intensity, I'd say, surrounding the reported rift between Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. While there's clearly some turmoil, disagreement, discomfort, and frustration present, the initial reporting seemed to suggest an imminent explosion. That the Ravens are prepared to play hardball, and Lamar might be thinking, fine, I'll head to Las Vegas or Miami, engaging in that same high-stakes negotiation. However, I sense Breer isn't exactly dousing the flames with cold water, but he's certainly applying a cooler spray. This aligns with what I expressed previously. Colin came out suggesting the Ravens have significant equity with their fan base, that they could move on from Lamar and everyone would accept it. I disagreed profoundly. The reaction in the comment sections was largely, yeah, what are you talking about? People were furious. Many Ravens fans point to the offensive line and other issues. But internally, and this is what Breer highlights, the belief is that this roster was exceptional, one of their best in recent memory. They were favored to win the Super Bowl next year. Even last year, falling short was viewed more as a couple of hiccups. The perception was that this is an elite, special, formidable team. Sure, there were some miscommunications, notably in that game against the Buffalo Bills, but otherwise, they were the team to beat. This echoes what I've reiterated about Tom Brady labeling this Ravens squad a sleeping giant. My response was always, fine, but why are they sleeping? That was my entire argument. This team shouldn't be dormant. If you want to call them a sleeping giant, okay, but there's no justification for them not being awake right now. Brady made that comment when they faced the Pittsburgh Steelers with Russell Wilson, and that notion has stuck with me. I recall emphasizing, but why are you asleep? Why is this giant sleeping? Indeed, numerous issues have been woven throughout this team and this entire campaign. Frankly, it would feel strange if we enter next season with largely the same cast. Maybe they upgrade a position. Oh, we acquired this lineman. Great. Or, we got a new cornerback. Okay. But if everything else remains predominantly unchanged, I'd still look at this team and not think, If only they had a significantly better offensive line, they'd be unbeatable. I'm not entirely convinced of that either. So, I'm genuinely intrigued to see their next steps. What will they do? Consider the San Francisco 49ers as an example. They endured significant injuries on both offense and defense, losing their starting quarterback and his backup. Yet, they positioned themselves to contend for the top seed. The Los Angeles Chargers saw their offensive line decimated. Now, you can't always overcome injuries. The 49ers were ravaged by them last year and missed the playoffs. It's not automatic that a team's ability to achieve under duress makes them amazing. Colin, in discussing the Detroit Lions' downfall, cautioned against blaming the offensive line, citing the Chargers and Texans making the playoffs despite poor lines. But what about the Kansas City Chiefs? They couldn't survive similar issues. You can't always endure it. Sometimes that's the breaking point. This just got the best of us. The problem arises when you've already used that excuse. What got the best of you last year? And the year before that? The Chiefs have built up considerable goodwill in that regard. The Ravens? Not so much. Consequently, I'll be fascinated to observe their trajectory from here. Colin seemed to frame a scenario where they retain John Harbaugh, keep everything else static, but move on from Lamar. That would incite marches in Baltimore. I simply don't see it happening. It would be astonishing. If they hired a prominent hotshot coach who moved on from Lamar to draft a quarterback, initiating a total rebuild, that would at least make conceptual sense. I'm not advocating for that, but logically, I could comprehend it. Okay, I understand the aggressive moves, ushering in a new era. However, the initial narrative felt off, just as continuing with the exact same approach feels equally peculiar and misguided. At this juncture, the Ravens seem a handful of moves away. I keep returning to this analogy because it fits numerous situations. The Philadelphia Eagles in 2023 were far from Super Bowl contention. Yes, they reached the playoffs, largely due to a favorable early season record, but they weren't a good team. Their record was misleading, featuring narrow wins over inferior opponents. Though often overused, they were exposed in the playoffs. They lost, then hired multiple new coaches, secured 2 major draft picks, made key free agent signings like Saquon Barkley, and that ultimately propelled them to the Super Bowl. They had a core: Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, and Nick Sirianni as head coach, though he wasn't calling plays. Vic Fangio orchestrated the defense. Let's be clear, that was an overhaul. The players they added, Barkley, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, along with 2 new coordinators, a fresh play caller, and a defensive coordinator who transformed a bottom-tier defense into a top-tier unit, constituted massive changes. It wasn't a full rebuild, but it was akin to taking clay, smashing it, and starting anew. Perhaps it was the same clay, but profound changes were made. This mirrors where the Ravens stand now. You must do something. Changes are imperative. How can they not? You need aggressive, bold swings. What are they? I don't know. I'm not on $1 million salary. The individuals earning those sums are supposed to identify solutions. See what we cannot. I didn't foresee the Eagles acquiring Saquon Barkley or C.J. Gardner-Johnson, hiring Fangio or Kellen Moore. I wasn't prescribing, do this, this, and this to win a Super Bowl. So, what's the plan? I only know that the current approach isn't working, and that reality must be confronted. We can cite the offensive line or play calling. That's all part of it. I've criticized the play calling before, but you need more vitality here, more spark. Moreover, you are currently wasting Lamar Jackson's prime. How much elite, peak performance Lamar remains? 2, maybe 3 years? That's my projection for players like Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes as well. You only have so much time. Even if Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes play into their late 30s, they won't resemble their current selves. It will be different. Fascinating to witness, but undeniably different. Thus, with this version of Lamar Jackson, what have you accomplished? Frankly, not enough. Not nearly enough. You must resolve this already. What are we doing here? Those are my perspectives. I'd absolutely appreciate hearing yours. What are your thoughts on Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens? Do you believe the Ravens would consider moving on from Lamar? What decisions should they make moving forward, particularly if you think retaining Lamar is the more logical choice? Let me know. I read every single comment. Whether you agree or disagree, let's engage in discussions, even debates, but ultimately, let's enjoy the conversation. Please consider subscribing. We're building an amazing community here, and I'd love for you to be part of it. I aim to create something we all feel connected to, something we're excited to join. I believe we're well on our way. Don't forget to like this video, as it genuinely helps with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.